How did you find out you were getting cheated on? I went on a solo road trip from New York to California. My boyfriend of 5 years was supposed to fly to San Diego to meet me, then we would drive back home together. I picked him up from the airport and we used his phone to find directions to a restaurant reservation. While doing this, he received a notification from a social media app that he must have forgotten to delete. I asked him about it, and he quickly grabbed his phone and deleted the app. He told me that reading the conversations he had been having with other women would only hurt me more. And since he assumed I was going to break up with him anyway, he wanted to avoid the embarrassment of being exposed. I made him call his mother to arrange for his belongings to be moved out of our apartment. I told him to find his own way back home, and I continued the road trip without him. When I arrived back home, it was as if he had never lived there. That's exactly how I wanted it. Wow, that guy was a coward. Being unfaithful and not even able to face the consequences of his actions, that's just weak. Story 2. I worked hard to support my small family, but she often complained that I worked too much. One day I decided to come home early to surprise her, but I had forgotten my key to the apartment. I called her and said, "Surprise, I'm home." She responded with, "Really?" At the time, I thought it was because she was happy I was home, but later I realized it was because she had her boyfriend there. When I got to the door, I knocked and knocked, but there was no answer. I called her, but she wouldn't pick up. I managed to peek through a gap in the blind and saw her helping her boyfriend climb into the hallway closet. Feeling shocked and betrayed, I left and went for a drive to clear my head. She called me, wanting to know where I'd gone. She claimed she was in the bathroom. I told her I knew the truth, but she didn't confess until the next day. Eventually, she decided she was too young to be a wife and mother and left us. I was only young at the time and suddenly found myself a single parent. Story 3. I was working late, finishing up around 1 a.m., and I always called my ex-girlfriend on my way home because she would stay up to hear about my day. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was laying in bed, but I could hear people talking in the background. I believed her at first, but her house was literally on the same street it took to get home, and her car wasn't parked out front. So I decided to stop by and sent her a text saying I was on her front porch and that she should come out to say hi. Her mom happened to be awake and saw me on the porch. She came out and said, "She told me she was with you." It turned out that my ex was with my best friend, who had lived with me for 4 years but had recently moved out. Story 4. Her roommates called me and asked if I could meet them for lunch, saying it was important. I agreed and met them, and they told me something that shocked me. They revealed that she had been cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend the entire time I was away on deployment. They showed me photographs as proof. This was back when they had to get pictures developed at a store. They said I was a good man and that I didn't deserve to be treated that way. They'd gathered my belongings that morning while she was at work and gave them to me. Feeling betrayed and angry, I drove straight to her workplace, walked up to her and showed her the pictures. I demanded that she return the engagement ring to me. She gave it back without much argument, and I left without saying another word. Later, she called me, yelling about how I had conspired with her roommates and trying to make it seem like it was my fault. She asked why I had met up with them. I calmly replied, "It's called respect and closure, and it sounds like this." And then I unplugged the landline phone. I waited an hour, plugged the phone back in, and called the phone company to change my number. I never heard from her again after that. The whole experience was incredibly difficult for me, and I'm truly grateful for her roommates and the friends who supported me through what was probably the darkest time in my life. I can't imagine the experience those roommates must have gone through after they did that. That ex sounds like the kind of person who would try to get back at them for that. Story 5. She seemed really uncomfortable whenever I saw her messaging certain people or opening Snapchats from them in front of me. Then a few of my friends contacted me and told me who these people were and what she had been up to. I was with her at the time and she started crying, claiming she didn't know those people and making other excuses. Later that night while she was asleep, I checked her phone because it was going crazy with notifications. I found a guy calling her and sending her photos, asking if she could find some time to send some back. I looked further into her phone and discovered that this had been going on for well over a year. She had been meeting up with her exes and sending photos. She even went to meet a guy while I was at her house, pretending she was just going to the shop. I tried to wake her up and moved her out, but she refused to leave. A few days later, she was already involved with my friend and had a new boyfriend, even though we had been together for almost 2 years. It's been nearly 4 years since then, and I haven't felt the embrace of another girl since. Story 6. My fiancé and I shared a bedroom wall with another tenant. Our apartments were separate but right next to each other. While I was at work one day, the tenant from the other apartment complex texted me, asking if my fiancé and I could keep the noise down, especially the noise coming from our bedroom. I texted back that I wasn't home. I was at work. The tenant then replied that someone was in the room with my fiancé and it wasn't me. I left work immediately. I ran home as I was only a 15-minute walk away. Living in Wellington, New Zealand, When I arrived at the apartment, I found my fiancé and he was in our bed with one of his employees. I packed up all my things and moved out that very night while he was at work. We never spoke or saw each other again. I left the country shortly after that incident. Story 7. I was feeling bored at work one day and decided to log into Facebook, which I hadn't done in a long time. As I browsed through my notifications, I saw a message from a year ago that I hadn't noticed before. It was from someone I didn't know, claiming that her boyfriend had been with my then girlfriend. I didn't believe the message and asked my girlfriend if she knew this girl. She said she didn't. I told the girl who had messaged me that I didn't believe her story. However, her ex-boyfriend, the one who had allegedly been with my girlfriend, messaged me with proof. It turned out that the incident had happened right before my girlfriend got into pharmacy school. I had moved with her to a city I didn't want to live in, working 2 jobs to support us both. When I got home, I confronted my ex-girlfriend with the evidence. She admitted to everything. I asked if there had been anyone else, and she confessed she had cheated multiple times with multiple people throughout the 5 years we were together. These were friends of hers that I had met and helped out on several occasions. Every few months, she messages me, asking if I would ever consider getting back together. My answer is always no. Story 8. My college girlfriend told me she was hanging out with her friend Kenny. I knew Kenny a little bit, and since I was a trusting person, I didn't suspect anything. A couple of days later, I was helping her put her laundry away when I found Kenny's shirt. She tried to explain it away as something innocent, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I didn't believe that someone who was cheating would be so careless as to get caught so easily. Still, I was a bit suspicious, so I casually mentioned this to a mutual friend of ours, the girl, Kenny, and me. To my surprise, they said, "Yeah, she's definitely involved with Kenny, and it's been going on since the start of your relationship." Apparently, everyone knew about the affair except for me. My friends just didn't know how to tell me. Looking back, I still believe that the pain of my friends not telling me about the cheating was worse than the actual betrayal by my girlfriend. Yep, those are not good friends. They're more like enabling friends. If you have friends like that, run. Story 9. My husband came home one day and, out of the blue, said he didn't want to be married anymore. I was completely devastated because we had a daughter. And I was just about to finish my undergraduate degree. I couldn't imagine how I would manage as a single parent. I called my best friend, hoping for some sympathy and support. However, her response was, "What a cheap guy. How dare he cheat on you? He's such a jerk." Feeling betrayed, I asked my husband to leave. For the next 2 weeks, I started receiving strange hang-up calls around 3 a.m. every night. This was during the time when landline phones didn't have caller ID, so I had no idea who was calling. It was very unsettling. Eventually, I discovered that my husband had been cheating with none other than the best friend I had called that day. I figured it out when I heard her parrot in the background of one of the hang-up calls. I wasn't sure who I was angrier with, her or him. In the end, I decided they both deserved my disdain. Getting divorced was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. 2 years later, I met my soulmate, who adopted my daughter. This wonderful man elevated my daughter's life, and in her eyes, demoted her biological father to what she still refers to, 35 years later, as the donor. Story 10. I installed an app on his phone that could retrieve all deleted text messages within the last 90 days. This was after an incident where I was using a MacBook that we shared for work, and he received an iMessage that said, "Okay, this is our story. If they ask why I sent you a picture like that." It turned out that a woman he worked with had sent him a suggestive picture, and their coworkers, who also knew me, had seen her do it. They must have made up a story to cover it up. When I confronted him about it, he called me crazy and insisted that he loved me more than anything and couldn't even think of another woman in that way. I also confronted her. She swore that nothing had happened between them and that they were just friends, but I couldn't shake my suspicions. Later, I ran into her and greeted her in a friendly manner. We chatted for a bit, and as we were saying goodbye, she told me, "He's a really bad guy, I hope you know." I smiled, hugged her, and went on my way. I hope she's doing well. I don't regret invading his privacy because it gave me the strength to leave him. Story 11. I started noticing some strange behavior from him, and I asked a few times if he was okay. He said everything was fine, so we continued as usual. One day I forgot to take my medication and felt really awful at work. I called him to ask if he could bring my meds to me since I couldn't leave to get them myself. He simply said no, and that was it. I was taken aback and asked if he was okay, but he didn't respond. Something was telling me something was off, so I asked him out of the blue if he still loved me. He replied, "No, I'm sorry," and hung up the phone. I sat at work for the next 3 hours, just crying. At the time, I had a child from a previous relationship, and we had a baby together. We had been married for 11 months and had been together for 3 years. About a week later, while I was still trying to understand what had happened, I got the cell phone bill and actually looked at it for once. There were so many calls to and from the same number in his line. Calls that started 5 minutes after I left for work and others that went from 3 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. I checked the previous month's bill for that year, and it turned out that for the entire 10 months since my son was born, he had been with another woman daily. I called him, but he didn't pick up. So in my emotional state, I yelled at his voicemail. We were taking turns staying in our home with the kids while I looked for a new home to buy. His mother also lived in the home and would visit once a week to do yard work and see the kids. When he didn't answer my call, I went outside and, in my wisdom, started yelling at his mother about the cheating. She listened until I broke down sobbing, and then she held me. I still love his family. The day after I moved into my new home, his girlfriend moved into our old home. She quickly stepped into the role of mom and wife in the family home. They had a child together, but he's not with her anymore either. He's a great dad to his son and would do anything for him. My oldest didn't have a relationship with his father, so he asked if he could stay with his brother during visits. It was hard, given the circumstances, but they loved each other, so he went for visits too. His mom and sister both told him he was messing up a good thing and needed to get his act together. I didn't expect that, but it was honest. 18 years later, I've been happily married for 15 years and have 2 more sons. I never would have guessed things would turn out so well. We always put our kids first after the divorce and still get along today, despite the past. Story 12. It's kind of funny to think about now, but we had just enjoyed a lovely evening at home with a homemade dinner and some games. We were relaxing on the couch, watching some late-night TV shows that weren't very serious. I don't know if anyone else watches this show, but in my area, Cheaters was a show I'd like to watch occasionally, just for fun. We were in the middle of an episode when he said he wanted to go to the gas station to get some snacks and drinks. I believed him without any suspicion, so after he left, I got a message from him confessing that he had cheated on me with a coworker. It came out of nowhere. No signs, no big changes in his behavior, nothing. At first, I thought he was joking, so I kept teasing him and not taking it seriously. But he kept insisting that it was true. Even though he said he was sorry and wanted to stay married, he didn't stop seeing this other person. The cheating went on, many times. In the end, he decided to leave on his own. That was the best thing he could have done for both of us. Wherever you are now, Tim, I hope you're happy and that you've changed from the person you were when we were married. I never want to see or hear from you again, but I'm a very different person now. Happier, healthier, and more fulfilled than I was when I was with you. I hope you find happiness, love, and respect in your life, and please stay away from me and my family. Story 13. The first time I found out, I was searching for something related to my kids in my email when I stumbled upon a message that left me devastated. I spent the night crying, sitting there, unable to process the pain. The email was from her, and it said, "I love you. I want to be with you every second." The second time I discovered her infidelity was after we had another child. She came home crying, saying she was sorry. I was naive to think, even for a moment, that the cheating had stopped. The only reason she confessed was because the guy, who was her boss, had a breakdown and told all of her colleagues about their affair. As a result, she lost her job. Deep down, I knew the cheating had been going on almost since the beginning of our relationship. Every now and then, I'd see a message that hinted at it. I kept hoping it would stop, thinking that the consequences of continuing such behavior would be too severe for both of us, but she couldn't seem to control herself. I haven't been the same since I found out. It feels like my romantic life ended the day I met her and fell in love with her. We're still living together because moving out would mean ruining our lives and the lives of our children. We don't fight, we're just friends now. I think about the betrayal every single day. Story 14. The girl who my ex-boyfriend cheated on me with managed to become part of our friend group. One night she was at my best friend's house for a sleepover with another friend. I wasn't there because I had to work early the next morning. My friend noticed something strange between this girl and my ex. So, while the girl was asleep, my friend checked her phone. The phone wasn't locked. My friend found messages that proved the girl and my ex were cheating. The next day, my friend told me what she had found and even showed me some photos as evidence. That was the end of my relationship with my ex. Our 4-year relationship was over. What made the situation even worse is that my best friend and this girl were considering dating. My ex was also part of our friend group, so the cheating caused a lot of issues that were hard for everyone to deal with. Story 15. My ex-partner was working abroad when I received a call from her employer. She had been in a car accident and needed to be flown to a different location for surgery because she was in a remote work area. Her employer paid for my international travel so I could be at the hospital when she came out of surgery. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU and then in recovery. A day or two after the surgery, when she was awake and able to talk, I felt like something was off. It wasn't just because of her medical condition. After those 2 weeks, I was unpacking her things after getting her home. I was checking what I had packed for her at the hospital and what might be missing. I noticed an external hard drive was missing. While she was sleeping on the couch, I was making the bed and felt something tucked between the mattress and the box spring. It was the hard drive. I looked at its contents and found all the evidence I needed of her infidelity. To make matters worse, the person driving the car was the person she was having an affair with. I did mention the ex part, right? Good. Good riddance. Story 16. The guy she cheated on me with didn't even know I existed. I was out of town visiting my dad in Boston when he sent me a message on Facebook. He told me he was sorry that he had no idea about me. He said he was hammered that night and woke up before her. When he used the bathroom, he saw my bathroom kit. She tried to tell him it belonged to her roommate, but they lived in a one-bedroom apartment. He got suspicious and found out she was in a relationship with me. It was a real stand-up thing for him to do. I didn't feel any anger towards him. In fact, I felt the opposite. He even invited me out for drinks and said he'd pay. I politely turned him down. Thankfully, we only had 6 weeks left in our lease. Those were the most painful and awkward 6 weeks of my life. She threw away a 3-year relationship because she didn't want to go to Boston and was upset that I still wanted to visit without her. Now I'm happily married to a wonderful woman. That experience taught me a lot and helped me avoid a potentially disastrous situation. Story 17. As a sports writer for a daily newspaper, my job was to cover high school football games in different parts of the region. One Friday night, I was assigned to a game in my hometown. My then-wife was working at the concession stand during the game as part of her role as a band booster mom. She didn't know I would be there because my work schedule was always changing. I was in the press box, keeping track of the game statistics for my article. I used binoculars to see the game better. While looking through them, I saw my wife at the concession stand on the visitor's side. Next to her was a local police officer. When I saw them kiss, I realized what was happening. We eventually got divorced. The police officer also divorced his wife of over 30 years so he could marry my ex-wife. They were married for about a year before they got divorced too. I have since remarried and will celebrate my 9th wedding anniversary in May. All these cheating stories are making my head spin. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 18. He forgot to log out of an account where he had posted an ad looking for a roommate with benefits. In the post, he mentioned that the previous roommate had moved out after finding a permanent partner, which was true. She was supposed to be my best friend. He also said he was in an unhappy marriage but felt guilty about leaving me. He claimed this was because no one wanted me and that my family had disowned me. However, this wasn't true. I'd been engaged twice before I met him, and my family hadn't disowned me. They simply disliked him and believed he wasn't good enough for me. After reading his post, I copied the names of all the women who had responded to his "pity me, I'm in a loveless marriage" act. I created my own account and replied to his post, correcting his lies about my family disowning me and questioning why it would be undesirable if I had received 2 marriage proposals before meeting him. I also told him I wanted a divorce. Then I messaged all the women and told them to look at his post. Each of them got upset with him for lying and blocked him. He tried to tell me it was just a joke and that I should know he loves me more than anything. I pretended to accept his apology but made him sleep on the couch for the next week. What he didn't know was that I was planning my escape with my best guy friend and my mom. 3 days later, they arrived 30 minutes after he had left for work. He packed up all my belongings and I was gone before he came home for lunch. Story 19. We were on our way home from a friend's house in the car, just about to move in together. He decided that if we were going to live together, I needed to know about a secret he had been hiding from me for 6.5 years. It was a bit unusual. No, I won't tell you what it is, and no, it's not bad. But I didn't really care. It didn't affect me at all. He was really scared that I would leave him right then and there. But as we talked more about it, he admitted that to engage in the secret, he had been doing some role-playing online with some people. That did bother me. I tried to be an understanding person. Knowing that he's on the autism spectrum, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and explained that I was uncomfortable with it and that from now on, it would be considered cheating. I set a clear boundary, and he told his online role-playing partners that he wouldn't be doing it anymore. Our relationship got better. We moved in together, and I was happy. Our house is really small, so his gaming computer is connected to the living room TV, and he put his desk under it. He gave me full permission to use the computer whenever he's not around, whether it's to fill the house with music or watch movies on the TV. I have my own laptop for other computer tasks. So, 3 months after moving in together, he was at work, and I turned on the TV to play music from the computer. He had left the computer running, and Discord was open to a conversation he was having with a friend. I'm not the type to snoop, but I noticed the italic writing, which is used for role-playing. There were a lot of emojis, so I took a quick look. I saw that it was a suggestive roleplay. The friend sent a message, and as I was reading it, a response from my boyfriend popped up. They were role-playing while I was watching. I took a picture of the conversation and sent it to him. I asked him why he could only go 3 months before cheating on me again. We had a big argument. He begged for forgiveness, and we didn't sleep in the same bed for a week or two. He deleted his Twitter and Discord accounts. I gave him another chance. I even tried role-playing with people online to see what it was like. It wasn't for me, but I could see how some might find it appealing in a detached way. Story 20. A friend of his, who I'll call Jay, started visiting after not seeing each other for about 3 years. Gradually, my then-boyfriend began spending time with Jay that we would have spent together. I thought it was okay because they hadn't seen each other in so long. One day I saw him walking somewhere and asked if I could join him. He said yes, and as we talked, I noticed he was wearing a new necklace. I asked him where he got it, and he told me that Jay had bought it for him. I thought it was a bit strange, but didn't think much of it. We walked around the block several times, and then he said he wanted to be friends with benefits. I asked him why, and he said it was because he didn't feel like he loved me, but thought he still had some feelings for me. I told him I couldn't handle that kind of relationship. He said fine and called me by my full name instead of the nickname he usually used. Not too long after, I talked to his stepsister and found out that he had been messing around with Jay ever since Jay started coming over. They were now dating. She also introduced me to his ex, who I didn't know existed until then. His ex had gone through the same thing with him before he got with me. His ex and I are now good friends, and we both agreed to never speak to him again. Story 21. She used my computer because at the time it was the only one we had. She left herself logged into her Gmail account, and I thought it was still logged into mine. I saw an email with a spicy subject line and, out of confusion, clicked on it. After reading the email, I realized my mistake, but now I was curious. I checked the outbox and folders and found emails that were several months old. Because I was hesitant, I didn't know how to handle the situation. Instead of confronting her, I kept it a secret that I knew about the emails. I started snooping pretty regularly after that, but I never saw any more messages. I'm not proud that I snooped, but it made me feel better that I didn't find any more messages. I tried to log into her email one day and it sent an alert to her phone, making her think someone was trying to hack her. After that, I stopped snooping. I don't know if that made her more sneaky or not, but I never found any more messages. Over time, I put it out of my mind, and years went by without seeing more messages. We had a happy relationship. I proposed, and we've been married for a year. Not proud of it, but I continued to snoop whenever I had access to her phone or computer and never saw a hint of anything again. Until this summer, I found a series of conversations with the same person from years ago, going back months. They were casually talking about our plans for trips and other life events. I found out she was planning on meeting him at our home that week. I confronted her and told her I knew about the first time and this time and that if he comes over, we're done. It was a really tough week. I was in pieces, heartbroken. I asked her why and if there were other men. She confessed it was the same person, someone she met when she was young and going through a lot of emotional struggles. She told me he made her feel special and needed, but he only contacted her when he wanted something, creating a cycle of need and then emotional struggles. We had a long conversation, and I learned more about her than I had during our entire relationship. I learned about her experiences and how she was manipulated. She said this guy made it feel different, and it became an attachment she couldn't shake off. I told her I'm willing to reconcile because I love her, but it has to end. And if I ever suspect anything like this again, we're through. She said she realized that everything she was seeking, she found in me, but she didn't know how to open up about her past to me. We've been in couples therapy, and I feel like we've made a lot of progress. She's more open, free with her feelings because she knows I won't dismiss them. We talk more and are more intimate with each other, more often. We're making progress, and I truly believe she regrets it. Maybe I'm too soft, but I don't want to lose everything we've built in this relationship without at least trying. She seems happier now that her secret is out, and we can talk about it more freely. She's also pursuing individual therapy to help her with her own issues. I hope that in time we can put all this behind us and have a happy future together. Story 22. This story might seem a bit immature, but it was the first time I experienced something like this with a girl I dated for 4 years. It all happened during our final year of high school. She posted a picture with another guy on Instagram. They worked together, so at first I didn't think much of it. Then she posted him as her Man Crush Monday on social media, if you remember those trends. A couple of hours after I saw the post, she called me. She wanted to go to a movie with him. She said, "I don't want to break up, but I'm going to a movie with him and I promise you I won't do anything worse than kiss him." I was shocked by her openness. I told her to go ahead, but that I was done with the relationship. She called me, crying over and over about an hour. After that, she made a post about how sad she was to be single, followed by an Instagram post of her at the movies, sitting on his lap. It was a wild situation. I decided to get back at her. She was the jealous type and had a list of girls she hated. They all disliked her, and I was considered somewhat handsome back then. I ended up involving myself with 8 different girls that year, all of whom she absolutely despised. In our small-town school, it was impossible for her to avoid hearing about it. It got to the point where she started contacting me, trying to get back together. I wouldn't reply. Instead, I would just change my profile picture to a different one of me with the girl she hated. Eventually, she started insulting me out multiple times about it and ended up staying with the person she hated the most for the next 3 years. Ironically, this person turned out to be an amazing person, the exact opposite of my ex. Years later, after I had forgotten about it all and was still dating the girl she hated, my ex messaged me out of the blue. Her message said, "Are you seriously still dating her out of spite?" I told her that we genuinely liked each other, but she refused to believe it. I left her message unanswered and went on with my life. For some reason, it seemed to haunt her, and she still messaged me years later about it. It was a very strange and sad situation, but she had brought it on herself. Story 23. She works as a massage therapist, dividing her time between giving massages and working at the front desk of the spa where she's employed. On days when she had massages scheduled, she would leave her Apple Watch at home. It would only alert her to text messages, which wasn't a big deal. However, there was this one guy who kept messaging her. I didn't know her passcode for the watch, so I couldn't read the messages at first, but I took a guess anyway. It turned out to be the PIN she used for her bank card, and the messages were exactly what you'd expect. The kind of sweet talk and romantic nothings people exchange when they're in a new relationship. I read about how he planned to bring her Starbucks at work and how he wanted me out of the picture so he could marry her. It wasn't pleasant to go through her messages, but it was clear there was no fixing our relationship. We got divorced soon after, at my request. She still has no idea that I read her messages. We were together for 6 years and have 2 kids. She moved out in February. I'm not sure if she ever ended up with that guy, but now she's with someone new. They moved in together pretty quickly. As the father of 2 boys, I'm not thrilled about the situation, but I don't think she knows what a healthy relationship looks like. And I believe that eventually, I'll realize this and leave her too. Personally, I hope she never finds the peace she's looking for. She destroyed my peace of mind, and now dating is impossible for me. Story 24. Her best friend called and told me something that felt like it was straight out of a Hallmark movie. Her best friend was battling stage 4 cancer and had a very little time left. One day she called me and said, "I'm trying to leave this world without any regrets. I know you love her, but she's been cheating on you with her cousin." She was from the East Coast and I was from the West. She had discovered a family member living nearby, my cousin. They apparently got along and she would visit them frequently. While as many people might suspect, it wasn't really a cousin. It was a boyfriend. She had been draining me financially this entire time. I worked 2 jobs to support us while she went to school. We had planned to switch roles eventually, with her supporting me while I went to school. But when I found out about the cheating, I moved my things into a different bedroom, thinking that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. After her boyfriend broke up with her, she suddenly wanted to be together again. I wasn't interested, and that's when the craziness began. Eventually, I paid her a few $1,000s to move out and go somewhere else. As a final attempt, she stole my dog and gave it to her parents on the East Coast. When I asked for my dog back, offering to drive there to get them, they told me to take off. Then, with my next girlfriend, who later became my wife, I caught her in bed with another man. I simply told her to move out and that I would handle the divorce paperwork. At least she didn't do any crazy things to me like the previous one did. Story 25. It was the best day of my life, and I'll never forget it. It happened 6 years ago, and the effects of that day still linger with me. I worked in a corporate restaurant. I was a top earner, the head bartender, the funny guy, and I had my own apartment. I also filled in for management sometimes. She was the most attractive person in the staff. Things started off really well between us. It seemed like a perfect match. But after 2.5 to 5 years, everything spiraled downhill. I tried to break up with her, but her mom would tell her not to accept the breakup unless I gave her stuff, the dog or the apartment. Otherwise, her mom would tell her to lie and claim I had done something terrible, and everyone would believe her because she had medical problems and was petty. For 2 years, I hated her relationship with a mail server. I hated him, and I hated that I was honest with her, but he would still be invited to everything. I knew something was going on, but she never got caught. My friend told me in my kitchen and showed me texts between them and a picture of them being intimate at a bar. It was the most relieved I'd ever felt. I texted her exactly what I knew and how I knew it, and she didn't even try to deny it. 48 hours later, every trace of her was gone from my place. The only courtesy I extended to her was leaving that job, which was easy to do in the industry. I found a new and better job within a week. I kept the dog, the friends, and the apartment. Since then, I've had the strength to go through an awkward breakup when things aren't good a few months in, because I vowed to never hurt myself by living with someone for years that I don't love ever again. Story 26. I was at the bus stop, waiting for my bus to take me home. My girlfriend at the time, who was now my ex-girlfriend for 3 years, handed me her phone and said I could play a game on it. So I did. But something in my mind told me to check her messenger because I had a bad feeling. As I was on her messenger, I saw suggestive photos that she had sent to someone else. I clicked on the messages to see when she had sent the pictures, and it was just the day before. I felt like crying, but I turned my emotions off and handed her the phone with the messages displayed. She laughed and seemed not to care at all. Luckily, the bus arrived just then. I got on and sat at the back. The stranger noticed I was upset and asked, "Hey, young man, why are you down?" I told him what had just happened. He was a guy in his late 30s or 40s, with a personality that made him seem like a dad or a father figure. I couldn't help but tear up and cry after telling him my story. He said to me, "Hey man, listen to me carefully. Don't be upset about what you saw. Be happy that you now know who she really is, and be happy that you're going to get stronger because of this. Life can be tough at times, but it's up to you to make your life great. Everyone's life is like a story, and each day that goes by is like turning a page in the book of your life. Make your story a happy one, not a sad one." I will never forget that man who cheered me up. If you are reading this, whoever and wherever you are, thank you. Story 27. I was having dinner with my ex-boyfriend and his entire family. He lived a few hours away in a mountain town, and sometimes I would take trips with his family to visit him. This was one of those trips. The waitress at the Chinese food restaurant greeted us and said, "Wow, Andrew, you have the whole family here. Who's this girl next to you? Your sister?" "Oh, let me tell you. I have black hair, brown eyes, and brown skin. My ex was blonde with blue eyes and white skin. We in no way looked like a family, and that was very obvious." He was startled and replied, "No, this is not my sister. This is my girlfriend." The waitress then said, "No, it isn't. You come in here with your girlfriend all the time, and this isn't the same girl." He immediately turned red with embarrassment. I excused myself from the table and then came back to say in front of his family, "You know what, Andrew? I'm absolutely done with this relationship. You guys take care." With that, I stormed out, blocked his number, and that was the end of it. That waitress came in clutch. Damn. Story 28. I've had it happen twice with different girls. The first time wasn't great, but I wasn't really into her, so it didn't hurt as much as the second time. The first time I was traveling home from her house after spending Christmas Eve with her and her family. I was planning to spend Christmas Day with my own family. We hadn't been dating for very long, maybe about 6 months, so I wasn't sure about spending Christmas Day together. I didn't want to disappoint her, so we agreed that I would stay for Christmas Eve. We had a good night, and then a good morning. And on my way home, I received a text from her saying, "I wish you could have seen me in my Christmas outfit." I had just left her house and seen her in it, so I knew right away that the message was meant for someone else. On a different day, I went to see her and took her phone, where I saw all these messages to some other guy. I just left the phone on the bed and walked out, never seeing her again. The second time was after I had taken my time getting back into relationships, 4 years, because I hadn't had a good experience. My best friend was working for a company and suggested that I would be good at it too. I ended up working there for about 7 years and met a woman through work. We had a 4-year relationship, but she had been cheating on me the whole time with multiple men, including my best friend. I found out that she had decided to confess years later, so I had been hanging out with my best friend and he had been with her. I lost a 4-year relationship and a 30-year friendship. It really messed me up with trusting people, even questioning myself. After all, it was me who let them into my life. But I'm glad I found out. There are people out there who are raising other people's kids without knowing it, and that's just wrong. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.